This past week, the X-Men Age of Revelation Infinity comic number 4, penned by Tim Seeley, was released to some pretty palpable and understandable outrage. So much so that it caused him to quit X and move over to Blue Sky. Well, I'm going to admit that I hadn't been reading the X-Men Age of Revelation Infinity comic up to that point because I wasn't a Marvel Unlimited subscriber. I'm still a floppy reading Luddite. But I do generally like Tim Seeley, actually, and really appreciated Local Man, amongst other stuff that he's done in the past. So I did subscribe and did read it because I wanted to know what the controversy is about, because I am a fan of Magik and the X-Men in general. And I'm going to have to agree, this was a dumb decision based on her history, and the art is not great. There were some choices made. However, was it worth death threats? Or even this level of outrage? I'm going to talk about this because I feel like there's some nuance that's valuable. And I feel like I'm putting myself at a little bit of personal risk given the subject matter. But hear me out. I'm Dan Unthan, and this is the Doomcast. Alright, first off, do me two favors. Hit subscribe and the bell. Make about one of these videos a week. They're all great. Please don't miss even one. 2, extend me the courtesy of watching all of this video. Because I feel like there's nuance and context that's worth taking in with a level head when we talk about these things. And I'm going to try. And I'm also open to correction. If you get to the end of the video, please leave me a comment. Love to hear what your thoughts are on this as well. But let me start out by saying two things that I think are absolutely and arguably true. Subjecting female characters to sexual assault or torture for the sake of another character's plot or their own drama is wrong. Or male characters, for that matter. I don't think that's a plot device. 2, it doesn't matter that these things, they can be written about, and in fact they should be in media and discussed in the public sphere, but also carefully and respectably, and not flippantly. Second, threatening living human creators with death over what they wrote or drew for a fictional character is also wrong. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, that said, I can totally understand how a fandom that may have a pretty significant following and personal identification with Magik, especially if those fans are survivors of assault, would see a return of her character to hell and her abuser and assailant Belasco, also one of several literal Satans. That sucks a lot. That shit sucks. So I understand being very upset about that. Also, after having read it, I think that the artwork positioning her on her knees in a position that can really only be read as sexually submissive is gross. It is gross, but it's also not sexual assault, right? I can understand drawing the inference of that having happened there, however. I can't see being so angry at either creator as to threaten them with death or violence, though. For what it's worth, just kind of drawing on the story beats here, I would have to guess that the next issue is her breaking out of hell and getting vengeance on Belasco, right? I don't know if that makes it better, but getting vengeance on him for this and for his past crimes is kind of a justice she deserves, but also I'm not sure returning her in a state of submission was a good call at all. I'm trying to be fair, too, about this and not flip, because, 1, I'm a guy, painfully aware of that. 2, members of my family and far too many friends that I have to count are survivors of sexual assault. And I don't even like reading about it or the implication of it in light fiction like comics, or even literary fiction even makes me uncomfortable, even when it's presented as being essential to the plot. And I don't know how Marvel editorial necessarily thinks about this or thought about this, or the processes that went into the decision of publishing it. I do know that Rich Johnston, the Bleeding Cool, posed a question to Tom Brevoort on his Substack last year, asking why in a 2003 interview, or column rather, he stated that he hates Magik and would like to drop her on her head on concrete. Brevoort did reply to that and said, quote, "In the past, I haven't liked Magik pretty much at all, but that doesn't mean that the character doesn't have fans, lots of them. And being in the position that I'm in now means that I can prevent her from being written in the manner that used to irritate me, so there's no problem with using her." Okay, so I think a fully fair follow-up question there is, what irritated Tom Brevoort? And especially now that he's the ex-editor, I'm sure now, given the response to this book, he's got to be more irritated. But what about Magik bothered her, and what about this story didn't bother him when reading it? If this issue had started with this, been a few pages longer, maybe a double-sized issue, and ended with her slaying Belasco, finally, I don't think that people would be quite as upset with this. But I do think they would still be pretty upset, and justifiably so. Maybe, just maybe, using sexual assault and trauma as a plot device for women, or anybody, isn't good. Maybe also understanding what your character's fan base is and what they identify with them is essential before doing exactly what is going to really upset them. It's part of a track record of really mistreating female characters in a franchise that is actually incredibly popular with women because of how many female characters it includes. But also, let's cool it with death threats. You aren't fixing anything that way for anyone. Nobody is. Anger can be just and correct. And I think in this case it is. But even if you're right to be angry, what we do with that justified anger can be absolutely wrong, which I feel like that's the core conflict in X-Men books, right? Marginalized, oppressed people fighting in ways that are constructive rather than destructive, or rather the war of constructive ideology rather than destructive ideology of how to combat that oppression. Hopefully Marvel Editorial takes this as a learning moment, and hopefully the angriest of us can as well. I'm not defending the editorial or story choice, but I am saying that it's possible for people to make mistakes and learn and change their behavior and things that they do. And that's what we want, right? What this did do for me was to get me started reading Marvel Unlimited's app. Because I had it, I started reading the Magik series from Ashley Allen and German Peralta, which I had skipped due to my budget. And it turns out that it's not only fun and good, but it also has some very well fleshed out side characters like Cullen Isaacs, the entity Liminal. Also, Ashley clearly has a very solid understanding of Magik's inner conflict and the whole dark child dynamic. So it surprises me that Ashley Allen didn't get to write a Magik correlative book during the Age of Revelation if they were going to include some story that had this in context, because most other people who are writing ongoing series during Age of Revelation were also writing an ongoing series previously, and their work translated it. So instead, I mean, I understand that it's all collaborative, and Tim probably pitched a story that included Magik, and it's obviously Cable and a litany of other characters, Fabian Cortez, but just the same, I feel like Ashley has a really good handle on the character. So the upshot here is, if you're not picking it up and you weren't reading it, or you didn't read it, go back and read the Magik series starting in 2024 from Ashley Allen and German Peralta. Also, thanks for watching this. Take care and have a great week. Peace.